Professor Msindo is from the Rhodes University, and his firm background is history, and he'll be touching on issues of history, historical challenges pertaining to the theme that we are looking at. Prof, I'm going to give you time. Prof is going to speak very briefly, not more than 3 minutes. We want to give each executive dean time to present their thoughts, and later we will give space for interactions by the plenary. And I want to welcome you all. If you've got comments, especially colleagues that have joined us online, I think there's something about hashtag SAHUDA conference. It has got 2 options. There's one for University of Limpopo or University of Venda. So I'm also welcoming colleagues who have joined us online. And without wasting time, I'm going to ask Professor Msindo to give him the floor. Over to you, Prof. Here's the mic.
Thank you very much. To do justice to what I'm being asked to do this afternoon, I would rather ask questions for us to reflect on wherever we are going thereafter. Otherwise, if I try to give you answers to this, it will take us some days and it will become a whole course to do. What should we do in reflecting on historical challenges and issues of methodology and theories? I do think, to begin with, that for Africa to actually make itself ready for the future and to embrace what I view as sustainable development for the future, we actually have to begin by recognizing our historical legacies and lessons that could be drawn from the past. And I don't need to repeat what those legacies are, but I'll ask certain questions that may assist us here going forward. So, for instance, how did we, as a continent, at some point in the past, how did we get to have sophisticated engineering technologies, of building castles, and building such castles without brick and mortar, but using only stones? And these technologies allowed such kind of infrastructure to stand for centuries. How did that happen? What kind of technology do we need today for purposes of reimagining our built environment within the African context itself? How was it possible? And this is my second question. How was it possible for human beings to poison huge animals like elephants to death? Yet then that meat was ultimately suitable for human consumption. So this is poisoned meat. The animal has died, but people get it and eat it and they don't die. What kind of medical knowledge, what kind of chemistry was it that our elders had that allowed them to operate in such an environment and to be so audacious in such a manner? The third one is, how did our knowledge of botany and medicine sustain us in a harsher, more pristine environments? And what do we require to sustain such, or how could that be mainstreamed today in our understanding of medicine, in our understanding of chemistry, and so on? If we are to mainstream it, how are we going to do it? And if we do it, what will be the implication for the current capitalist dispensation for Africa? Fourthly, how was it possible to get communities of sparsely populated villages to communicate in real time? In that time, the drum was a symbol of communication. Fire was a symbol of communication. When that happens, people will gather together very quickly. How was that possible? What kind of human beings existed in that time that would be so alert and so able to interpret symbols, gestures, and the things that they see and respond so in a responsive and responsible way? Do we still have human beings of that kind today? If we don't, what kind of humanity do we need to inculcate in people today so that we can reimagine our kind of extant technologies and how we can use them for purposes of imagining the future? So, in trying to maybe provide some kind of answers to that, we will have to ask ourselves the following as well. What kinds of knowledges and learnings sustained such technological innovation for Africa? And how could we try to reimagine such and reset? The continent needs to reset because we are really operating from a false foundation. The colonial foundation that is nothing in for us. The technologies that we are using today, none of them are developed and conceived in Africa. And for that reason, as we continue to go on that trend, we are going nowhere slowly. So the question is, what kind of knowledges and learnings sustained such technological innovations in the past before Africa was eventually occupied and colonized? Do we perhaps need to think about how to recenter the goals and purpose of science in Africa? What exactly is an engineering professor doing on the continent that will get the continent somewhere? In what way could we create greater synergies, for instance, between law, language, and science? What would be the benefit of trying to break the barriers that exist between the disciplines? How could that maybe inform the future of African knowledge creation and African knowledge systems in the 21st century? Could maybe history, philosophy, and information systems speak to each other? My past tells me that they did. But in the present, we have been completely separated. We are unable to. And so we hear others priding themselves, I'm an economist, I'm a historian, I'm a linguist. The other one says I'm an engineer. But how do we get all these different persons specializing in different issues to speak to each other? Could that not be the panacea to Africa's problem? I do think it could be. So, when then we reflect things like methods and theories and so on in African studies, what is it that we are willing to say? What is sayable under the current research methods? What is it that elders in your community can tell you, and what is it that they cannot tell you? And why is it like that? Are we, by virtue of the methods we are using, we inherited from what are called the standards of the disciplines, are we by that token able to actually elicit the right information that might speak to the future of our communities, of our economies, of our political systems, and of our cultures? I don't think we do. My argument is that, and I'm finishing with this one sentence so that I don't continue, we need to reconfigure societies to create communities of trust so that those who make information available are able to trust the researcher. We have to dispense with the culture, with the model of gathering data. We tend to perpetuate the colonial model of visiting communities, mine the data, and departing without returning to present and speak to such communities. And that is our bane going forward. We should rather think about the relationalities between researchers and the communities. Thank you.
Another round of applause, colleagues. It was actually quite prudent that we have Professor Msindo starting, because he has now given us a perspective in terms of theories and methodologies. And of course, he started with the historical challenges or contestations that are there and quite a very important contribution. Thank you very much, Professor. Now I'm going to ask Professor Nkosi, who is based at the University of South Africa, the Executive Dean, College of Humanities, to say something about social well-being and development. And this is in relation to the theme of this conference. Let's welcome Professor Nkosi.
Good day, colleagues. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm tasked to look into social well-being and development. The question that was posed, how can we create professional leaders for one earth, one family, and one future guided by the SDGs? I checked on the relevant SDG, which is SDG 3, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. In 1978, we signed the Alma Ata Declaration where we said health for all. Are we really providing health for all for our citizens? Is the question that I'm posing to you. We said access and quality in all our health offerings. Is it happening in our country? And then we are looking at universal health coverage. We are looking at access, we are looking at quality, we are looking to the number of people who are unemployed, people who are unable to access the resources. I'm posing the question to you because it says, how can we create professional leaders for South Africa? Then I want you to just reflect on COVID-19, just for a minute. When it struck, borders were closed. We had to change the way we do things. We had to be innovative in our teaching and learning because we had the responsibility of teaching our students. We had to understand the situation when we talk about isolation. I'm talking about social well-being and development. We know where we are coming from. If you are staying in a one-roomed house, what does it mean when the minister said, isolate? Where are you going to isolate? And also we were reminded about hand washing. We know our challenges with water in our communities. And then when a person is struck by COVID, we had to think now and say, let's go back to our traditional methods. Ukugquma. I don't know, eLimpopo, what do we call it? Ukfuta. What is it? Steaming. We had to bring back our knowledge to deal with the current condition. And then I mentioned hand washing, and also we will do sun tanning. Other people, they say I'm sun tanning. Utameli sigaki, so that you get vitamin D. We are using our old existing knowledge to cure the current diseases. And then, if you are a family, it's where you gather your resources. It was promotion of the mental health. So you had to build your families because when we were told, don't cross borders, stay within, we had to gather around and be families. We think now of a family unit, we think of the psychological impact, the psychological support that we gave each other. We wanted to ensure that we are not affected by the ills of COVID-19. We knew what happened when one passes along. We knew our traditions, all the activities that were done were to deal with what was there at the time. Then the question is, what innovations can we bring for the universal well-being? As academics and students and communities, we need to create new knowledge. We need to look into how we prepare our education and training, how we design our curriculum so that it is responsive and also it's relevant to the needs of our communities. We need to partner with industries so that there is partnership and cooperation, and what we do is market related. And also we need to respond to challenges, and innovations are required in different aspects. It can be technology, where people are talking about AI. We are still in the field of humanities. We still contribute. It's not the scientists. As humanities, we can bring in new knowledge. And we look also into the social behavior patterns of what is happening in the communities. It starts with me and you. We need to take steps into ensuring that we take care of ourselves so that we educate others. Another part on the innovation is to engage our communities because it's where work is done. I'm sure most of you here understands that our curriculum is based on the community needs, in terms of relevance and also responsiveness. We need to appreciate the existing knowledge as the example I made with COVID-19 to build on the new knowledge and create a space for open exploration of ideas. As humanities, we need now to think on interdisciplinary. When COVID hit, we had psychological support, we can think of the psychologists, and also theological support because we had to rely on our pastors. We also need to think on information science, the way we communicated with one another, and also think on a wider aspect in terms of how art healed us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, another round of applause for Professor Nkosi. Thank you very much, Prof. Now we really get in there. We are going to ask Professor Shokane, who is the Executive Dean, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Zululand. She will give her inputs on humanity and humanizing perspectives. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon.
We have not welcomed her. Maybe that's why you are not so warm. I don't understand. And the short topic she's talking about is about humanizing. I don't feel that. Are you human beings?
Oh, they are zombified. Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to touch on a few points, specifically on humanities and humanizing perspective, humanizing perspectives. You'll agree with me that we have a diversity of perspectives in the humanities and social sciences. So it's sort of difficult to point a specific one. But maybe let me re-emphasize that in our field, it's very important for all of us to be familiar with the Humanities Charter. It has been there since 2011. So if you're not aware of it, you're really not in the right space. Because it's there for us, it emphasizes that we have to create responsible and ethical citizens. And you'll agree with me that in higher education, that's our role, actually, to educate, to teach, to conduct research. And at the end, everything that we're doing have to be in a responsible manner. But focusing on the theme, humanity amid crisis, an urgent call for restoration of peace, stability, and myself being a social worker, the Prof added socio-economic well-being, because you can't be really having all those issues, Prof Makashela, without socio-economic aspects. But what I want to share with you today, it's very important that we don't forget that we are still in the post-apartheid trajectory of scholarship. So whatever we're doing, we have to be sensitive to our immediate and long-term development needs, which are key in our society and also in the global south. And it's very important that we become inspirational, but with a clear roadmap for intervention within the means at our disposal. We take cognizance of all the challenges that we're facing from our various institutions. Some, they are also privileged, some with their historical disadvantaged backgrounds. In order to do this, I think I just have 5 brief key points. Once we talk post-apartheid, there's no way we will run away from colonization. And we have to remember that colonized people need to rediscover and recover their own history, culture, language, and identity. So it's very important to go back to the issues of rediscovery and recovery. Because in the essence, you'll pick up that we forget that we human beings, the sense of human being the issues of dignity, of respecting others, are not there anymore. And I always even share with the colleagues that I work with that you can't work with people if you don't love people. Humanities is about people. How are you going to serve the same people that you are interested with if you don't care, if you don't have that compassion, that care? So it's very important that we go back, because if you check on the theme, once we talk about restoration, it means something is lost. You can only restore something that is no longer there. So it's very important that we go back there, we find ourselves. We know and we acknowledge that there have been a lot of mourning in terms of protest in our language in academia, which you can see the lamenting, which is continuing also as an assault to the people. So it's very important that for us as academics in the humanities and social sciences space, we come up with theories of change. And this should expose and condemn the destructors and damagers of the histories, cultures, languages, and identities of all the local communities that we're serving. And also in the process of us being restored as human beings, as humanities, we mustn't forget to dream. Here we're focusing on the issue of imagining the alternative. All what we do is supposed to offer hope and assurance to communities. I have a strong passion of our history, cultures, languages, and identities, which have been trampled on. So it's up to us to ensure that the restoration we're talking about touches on all those issues. And we cannot have a sense of agency, agitation for change without commitment. So it's very important that whatever we do, when we teach, when we conduct research, our mission should be centered around change. This relates to the point about the lamenting, about the continued assault I was talking about. And the fifth one is about action, translating into dream into action, ensuring that the underdog, I just check my knowledge is protected, because you know there's a divide in terms of the knowledge, and hence now the issues of decolonization of scholarship and things like that are coming to the fore. So it's very important, and we have to ensure that whatever we do, it's improved, it's represented, and it's with truth and honor. So in this case, models of change becomes very necessary. And this demand should challenge all our institutions as universities to rethink our teaching and research policies. In essence, universities should self-criticize their existence. Why are we existing as our existence as a higher education institution? It's very important. We acknowledge that most of your universities these days, they are even focusing on the issues of Africanness and the other stuff. But the issue of why do we exist as a university is very important. As I conclude, Chair, us, I believe, as humanities and social sciences, we have a moral responsibility to ensure that our local communities are recognized and benefit from the research that we're doing, including building capacity, and to ensure that whatever we do, we alleviate the pain and the suffering which is there, the issues of poverty, people that we're serving, that we're supposed to serve, they regain their dignity and improve education. And in conclusion, I'll refer this specifically for also the deans here, my colleagues. It's very important that we should have humanizing leadership. Here we're supposed to lead with integrity, competence, responsibility, accountability, and fairness. And in the process of all these, colleagues, let us not lose our humanness. I still emphasize, let's treat people with respect and dignity, and which is common to all of us as Africans. We know the essence of Ubuntu. We've been taught that from our homes, which advocates collective responsibility for one another as a value and a philosophy for mutual coexistence and compassion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Shokani. Yes. And I actually wanted to say earlier on, when we started with Professor Msindo, to say, as you listen to the deans, executive deans here, giving their inputs, besides what they're saying, I think you should also be very happy that faculties are in good hands. But you're looking at me as if you don't agree with me. Do you agree? Then you should clap hands. I mean, all these inputs are definitely telling us our faculties of humanities and social sciences are in good hands. And it's quite impressive to listen to what the deans are saying this afternoon. This then takes me to Professor Msemwa, who's from Wits University at the Faculty of Humanities at Wits. Professor Msemwa will address us on social entrepreneurship and employability in the context of this. Over to you, Prof.
Thanks very much, Prof. And good afternoon to you all. So not only are our faculties in good hands, I do think what you have heard thus far from the three speakers has been an affirmation of the relevance of the continuing relevance of the humanities. Because not so long ago, in fact, I can go so far as to say that since the 1960s, I don't know how many times, countless times, when we heard that the humanities is in crisis. And that's a question that was raised by people from different angles, from different experiences on different continents. As I speak now, the United States is one such country where the humanities is indeed in crisis. But that was a debate that was perpetuated at a time when the STEM subjects were being popularized to the extent that they tended to actually subsume the importance of the humanities when it came to the allocation of resources and what have you. Now, I want to come back to this country and begin to talk about my topic, which is entrepreneurship and employability. I even wondered why I, as a historian, that's my own discipline, I would be given the topic that deals with entrepreneurship and employability. I understand the part about employability because we are not here in the humanities to simply teach for the sake of teaching, to simply have our students undertake graduate programs for the sake of taking them. They ought to be relevant. They ought to be making an impact. That knowledge you are trying to produce should have a bearing on long-lasting solutions to the challenges that society is facing. Again, I use the phrase, not so long ago. Not so long ago did entrepreneurship, or rather was entrepreneurship a word that social scientists and humanities scholars were comfortable with. We often thought that this is a word that was anathema to our own discourses because it spoke to business. The word innovation, nowadays you hear those two spoken in the same sentence. Entrepreneurship and innovation. But these words have, of late, become very critical to the humanities. It is because when you look at the high unemployment rate, especially in South Africa, every university has been seized with what happens with its own graduates. Are we simply producing graduates simply because we are a university, we got the money to produce graduates, but after the degree, where do they go? And it's important for us to think seriously about where our graduates land as soon as they are done with their degrees. We need to be thinking about the kinds of attributes that our graduates have as they prepare to go into society, to assist society, because there are so many gaps that they have to think about. And so we in the humanities have had to think broadly about what it means to be entrepreneurial to think creatively about how we employ ourselves. I think gone are the days where we all thought that after we are done with our PhDs, we are going to become lecturers. I think there's so much that we can do as social entrepreneurs. There's so much in terms of the challenges that human beings are facing currently. And in societies, the way we have been trained to actually embed ourselves within those societies is going to, allow us to broaden our thinking about what it means to be entrepreneurial. What is it that we are doing as we produce knowledge to benefit society? A social scientist should not always be thinking about benefits or in terms of profit, in terms of monetary profit. I think we should think broadly, like all social scientists are wont to do. We should think innovatively. And I did say at the beginning that innovation was yet another word that was often thought of as, belonging to scientists. I think we are in the business of innovating. The knowledge we are producing now, the impact it is having on society is actually an exercise in innovation. So we need to think and continue to think creatively about the work we do and its relevance. And I think the humanities is front and center in terms of leading that exercise. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Msewa. Very, very important points raised there. Now, we're moving from employability and social entrepreneurship. Now we're going to look at a very, very important topic, the question of language. And this is going to be addressed by Professor Ndlovu, who is the acting dean of the Faculty of Humanities. Is that with social sciences? Oh, and law. You see, this is now getting very serious. Law. So I'm actually sitting in between humanities and law. So I must be careful here. So you can imagine the Dean of Law and Humanities. He will be addressing this important topic, the question of language. Over to you, Prof. So it's from Walter Sisulu. Yeah, in short, we say WUSU. Sorry? Oh, yeah, I said Walter Sisulu, but I said in short WUSU. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not so sure if I'm going to live up to that very high billing. Nonetheless, I'll try my best. So I was asked to talk about language. And I thought in doing this, I should start by reading a quote from Ngugi wa Thiong'o. He writes, "African languages are more than just words. They are vessels of memory and carriers of the soul of a people." And why am I starting like this? I want to make the point that language is about well-being, first and foremost. If it is about well-being, then it is about being at peace with oneself and with others. It is about living in dignity. How then do we arrive at this? I would like us to remember what Fanon said about the colonial experience, that it is fundamentally a violent one. It targets the body, it targets the mind, and it results in psychosis. In other words, it induces illnesses. One of the vectors of those illnesses were colonial languages, which achieved a remarkable alienation of people from their environment, from their well-being, basically everything that has to do with their selves. So, what then are we meant to do? And maybe before we go there, let me give you another useful theory about what colonial languages do, or what they did, which we live with. There is a scholar called Stoller. Stoller argues that colonialism is associated with ruin. That was its purpose, to ruin, and she calls this ruination. In other words, it left something that can be likened to rot. That rot continues, has a long life, and we still have it in the post-colonial period. So the post-colonial governments then are meant to expunge that rot, or at least to stop it. And what has the South African government done in that respect, and perhaps other African governments? I think through the language policy framework for public higher education of 1997, it has provided for us in the humanities to heal people. In other words, to work towards well-being by making sure that if people use their languages, they can recover their sense of being. So language policies then are not just conduits of epistemic justice, this is what I want to say, but they are a part of a healing process, part of restoring a psyche and a body, a full person. But let me end on a word of caution. Having said this, there is always a danger in this exercise to end up with ethno-nationalist projects. In other words, where one language is imagined as being more important than the other, similarly, the people who speak that language being imagined as more important than others in that environment. That way we would have lost what language transformation is all about. Language transformation is about this sense of well-being I was talking about. It's about the recovery of Ubuntu. It's about the practice of Ubuntu. Thank you very much.
Prof, I wanted to say that you have really exceeded those expectations. You've really gone beyond how I thought. Okay. You'll agree with me, isn't it? Let's clap hands for that. Wonderful, Prof. And to really close it all, summarize it, I'm going to ask Professor Moyo. He's from the Northwest University, the Faculty of Humanities, to summarize and conclude this inputs. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Masoka. I think you should have prefaced by saying to the audiences that you put me on the spot, that I've only been invited to the panel 30 minutes ago. But nonetheless, what I've decided to do is to just reflect on the topic that we have here, humanity's imminent crisis. So quite often, as Prof. Musema said earlier, the discourse has been around the crisis in the humanities. And that's something that we have been trying to dispel. The humanities are not in crisis. It's people that misunderstand the humanities that are perhaps in crisis. Have and will always be relevant and will be central to quite a number of things in our societies. But looking at that topic, I thought, maybe we should have replaced the word imminent with immanent. So, just thinking about the human being as sort of, carrying something self-destructive. There's an immanent crisis in the human being. So I think the question of the humanity's immanent crisis is perhaps quite important, because if we look at all the crises, because humanity has been in crisis for time immemorial. There have always been flashes of a sense of a looming crisis, and those come and pass and so on. But today we have major crises that face us. And if you look at the source of most of those crises, they are deeply embedded in the human being, in the human greed. If you look at the way capitalism is driving our societies and how greed is actually the dominant factor, you can actually see that most of the crises that we talk about today are linked to our immanent sense of greed, which causes things like climate change, which causes things like the conflict, the forever, present danger of a war that could be cataclysmic, especially now with the nuclear and so on. You can think about the pandemics that we have been going through, HIV and now the COVID pandemic. All these crises are traceable quite often to human behavior, to the human being. So that's why I'm proposing that perhaps we must also start thinking about and interrogating the immanent crisis in the human being, and whether it's something that we can think about correcting. If you think about technological advancement today, the artificial intelligence, the fourth industrial revolution, and so on, there's a lot of good that come with these things, but quite often we are realizing the downsides, the dangers that come with these technologies. Right now, the war in Ukraine, there is a predominance of use of drones operated by someone in faraway places and just locating and bombing and so on, and with a lot of ethical questions because they talk about taking out someone when actually it's actually a war and you are killing human beings. But I think what is also fundamental to think about is the way the old problems that face humanity are always persistent. You talk about poverty, you talk about inequality, you talk about unemployment. These are problems that are perpetually with us, partly because of the greed that I've talked about. And I think these are things that we also are quite good at interrogating as the humanities. Think about race, gender, class, all those struggles, struggles for equality and so on. Those are the things that I think place the humanities quite at the center of not only change, but finding solutions to today's problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Moyo. I thought that was our secret, but the secret is out that I cornered you. Maybe the only thing I can say is apologies for having done that. Colleagues, we don't have enough time because, as I said, this was going to take us to 10 to. If it's possible, if I can allow just two really pressing questions, just two. And then you will engage with the executive deans. Some of them will still be here. I don't want some of the executive deans to miss their flight. And I've already noted Professor Mapaya, and then I will take Professor Ntombela. And I think, yes, I'm sorry to be so hard in this regard. Can I ask someone, Dr. Prof, the roving mic? And then, please, if you can really pose a question. I know, I was in Brazil, I was asked that, I became aware that there's a long question and a short question. So I would opt for a short question. And a long question would be there for about 10 minutes. So, very short question.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. My question is, when we say humanities, are we talking in broad sense, or are we talking about a discipline? Tied to that question is, would humanities be ready to call out other non-human distractions? Because it looks like humanity is a little bit timid in the face of the might of the hardcore sciences and other, yeah.
Thank you. Let's have Professor Ntombela there. One of you will, anyone who's brave to take that question? Yes, we'll see. Let's.
Thank you very much.
Moyo,
Lack of peace, instability, and lack of well-being are reaching crisis level. What can we learn or apply from our response to COVID-19? Where, as healthy as we were held hostage in our homes. How can we apply that response to respond to these conditions that are reaching crisis level? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Moyo. I'll ask you, and then the other one I'll ask Professor Ngosi, and then we'll be done. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you for that very important question. We are talking broadly about the humanities as the disciplines often called humanities and social sciences. And the question whether or not these are timid in the face of the STEM subjects or the sciences, I don't think that is the fact. What you find is that the humanities actually have been around for much longer than science. If you look at the history of the academy, you find that humanities were the first, actually, because philosophy and religion were right at the beginning of education, or if you call it intellectual education. And science came much later, and being questioned quite a lot at that stage as something heretic and something threatening what was then dominant, which was more religion and philosophy. So we go far back, beyond the sciences. But what is more important in today's world is just how the humanities are central to understanding and unlocking some of the challenges that we faced. If you look at the COVID-19 situation, or even the HIV crisis, what worked most was understanding human behavior and trying to find solutions by looking at how you can try to not just manipulate but understand how human behavioral patterns can aid communication of different kind of solutions. So in the COVID-19 situation, we had a lot of intervention from the social sciences to try to understand, communities and how all these interventions could work in different types of communities, and that cannot be done by sciences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Moyo. And the last question posed by Professor Ntombela will be responded to by Professor Ngosi.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Prof. Ntombela. On the word that you use, hostage, I want us to think. COVID-19, we did not know what was the causative organism of it. What we knew is that it led to death. So we had to come up with strategies that say, let us help and solve this problem because there is no treatment. As humanities here, we know that anything that happens, you need to be surrounded by your family. That's why we say, stay with your family so that when anything happens, you are with the loved ones. That is one point that you can take. And the second one, if you remember very well, because we did not have treatment, it was like healthy eating, sleep, relax. There was no treatment. On the positive side of the COVID-19, it helped us to be creative. It helped us to come up with new strategies. As the biggest universities of the land, we had to think fast. Remember, we're distance education, we had to move quickly online. All the universities in the country had to come up with means to say, let us be innovative, let us teach our students online. So we need to thank COVID in a way, and we saved lots of money. Remember, no alcohol was allowed. That was one thing.
Colleagues, this is actually the start of these conversations. And I think going forward, the next conference will have more time, and in terms of preparations, we'll also have sessions, probably have more sessions put in the program where deans will engage. I think I would like to thank the conference chair, Professor Makhatlela, for coming up with such a brilliant idea. Thank you very much. In my language, this is the beginning. And we are actually building, and all the notes and the anecdotes and the comments and inputs, no matter how short they are definitely going to contribute something in terms of taking the humanities and social sciences forward. And I want to thank my colleagues here. Thank you very much. Obrigado. Ra leboga. Bayadangi. This is the end of this session. Thank you very much.